Well, not at all, because if you look at the words on the page, and the words on the page are what matters here, because we're not talking about interpretations, etc. We're talking about what is actually said in the clarifications. The United Kingdom specifically says that her clarification is without prejudice to the opposite of what Spain wanted, without prejudice to the fact that the negotiations will include Gibraltar as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. So when Spain prodded, what she got was an explicit position from the United Kingdom that specifically told her that Gibraltar will be included in the negotiations. And what Spain did not achieve was the treaty change that she was looking for. And I think therefore we have to pause and analyze the benefits of the Spanish position for Gibraltar. The Spanish have said, and it's only them that have said it, that there is an ambiguity in the treaty, in the reading of Article 3 and Article 184, which in their reading is explicitly inclusive of Gibraltar. Now, that has not gone away, and neither has Gibraltar said that we have any view other than exactly the same view as the Spanish, that it is explicitly inclusive of Gibraltar. And the United Kingdom has issued a clarification without prejudice to its own specific inclusion of Gibraltar. The treaty, if it is entered into, will create both horizontal and vertical rights. That is to say, it will create rights between the parties, horizontal rights between the United Kingdom and the EU 27, and vertical rights. It will create rights for citizens against the contracting parties also, because it's about the continuation of EU law. Now, in that context, I think that there is a lot to be said for the position in which Gibraltar finds itself under the treaty, and the remarkable situation, therefore, that Gibraltar, Le Partido Popular, Señor Margallo, Señor Casado, Ciudadanos, and the United Kingdom are all on the same side of the interpretation of this position. And on its own is Spain, in the current guise of its government, the Socialists.
Well, as you mentioned, the Spanish government has taken this as a win, as have many political commentators.
Well, some of the political commentators who have said that this is bad for Gibraltar are the ones who say that some of the best things that might happen are bad for Gibraltar. This is the Spanish government spinning as best as it can. I've heard some statements from Josep Borrell today saying that the United Kingdom is a little bit less sovereign in Gibraltar today as a result of the arrangements that have been entered into. Well, look, this is out of the definition of what to say when you are left with nothing in the middle of a general election campaign. And there's almost unanimity in Spain, if you look at all the independent observers and the right, that actually this is not a win for Spain. But if you look at the way the Spanish government is spinning it, and you look at those who tend to side with the government of whatever political complexion it may mean, they're taking that other view. We should not be surprised by that. We should all be satisfied with our own independent analysis and the independent analysis of the government of the United Kingdom. That is all that's going to determine for us where we go. Step back, if you like, and analyze where we were 2.5 years ago. In April 2017, when Clause 24 of the negotiating guidelines came out. At that time, hell and brimstone was being advertised in Spain for Gibraltar. That's what Mr. Margallo said was going to lead to a Spanish Gibraltar within 4 years. Well, look, Clause 24 has really meant nothing in the context of the negotiations for a withdrawal agreement. We're in the withdrawal agreement, if there is one, and we're in the transitional period, and we haven't had to kowtow or bow to any Clause 24 aspects of any negotiation. In fact, Clause 24 is what the future relationship was supposed to be about, and that's what should be operative in the context of negotiations of the future. But if you look at Clause 24 and you look at the letters that have been issued, all of this is just the reality of Brexit. When we leave the European Union, absent everything that has been said this weekend, and absent Clause 24, any new arrangements with the United Kingdom require the unanimity of the 27 or more in the future member states of the EU. Spain is one of those 27 today, and therefore Spain will be required to give its consent to any new treaty. And Spain will look at that treaty from its commercial interests and its Gibraltar interests. And in order to ensure that Spain gives its consent to any new treaty, aspects relating to Gibraltar will have to have been cleared by Spain. That's why 96% of us voted to remain in the European Union, because we knew that if we left, any future arrangements would require Spain's consent in that sense, not because of anything that has happened this weekend. And that's what gives the lie to Senor Sanchez's plea to his people to recognize some sort of victory in what has happened this weekend. Look, the victory was the morning after the referendum, when we were leaving the European Union and any relationship in the future would have to be approved by unanimity. That is a political reality with which we have to deal, and that's why every surviving chief minister and I, and every business organization and workers organization supported that we should vote to remain.
Doesn't this mean that although the UK has promised to treat Gibraltar as part of it, it's accepted that the EU is not beholden to for the purposes of the future relationship?
Well, that's absolutely the position, but whether the United Kingdom position prevails and the Gibraltar position prevails or the EU position prevails is not something that is going to be for the politics of the letters. I mean, this is a question of what the treaty will say once the treaty is signed. That's why I'm so pleased that the treaty is not going to be reopened. That's why I'm concerned that this withdrawal agreement, if there is going to be one, should be the one that's approved. Because if there's a renegotiation, then Spain will, of course, insist that its treaty concern is dealt with in the treaty. And that's one of the things that I think we would be very keen to avoid. But that doesn't change the fact, as I've said a moment ago, that any future arrangements will have to have Spain's consent. There is a requirement for unanimity, and therefore Spain has a veto. This is where the United Kingdom is going to have to be very clear in the process of its negotiation, and is going to have to do that which Mrs. May has repeatedly said, and which is now said in writing in the letters. So we've got a Prime Minister that has put a position. The Prime Minister will change at some stage in the future. I think Mrs. May has been one of the most supportive Prime Ministers Gibraltar has ever had, and I wish that she stay in office for as long as possible. But now what Spain has ensured, actually, in its Pyrrhic victory, is that Mrs. May's position has actually become the position of the United Kingdom in writing, black upon white, in the letter that and clarification that Tim Barrow sent on Friday evening or Saturday morning, and then even further in the letters that were sent after the European Council on Sunday afternoon. So we are in a better position as a result, because that has now been expressed in that letter as the position of the United Kingdom.
So you see this as something that would not be affected by a change of leadership in the UK?
If there had been a change of leadership before these letters, then look, that might have been a matter of policy. But what Spain has engineered for us, in effect, is that now the United Kingdom has put its policy in writing, black upon white, in the letter from the ambassador to the European Union. And in my reading of Article 3 and Article 184, with that additional written position, which was not the case before, we may even potentially be in a much stronger position than we were.
Is this all academic, seeing as the withdrawal agreement is unlikely to make it through Parliament?
Well, you're absolutely right, and this is why Gibraltar is backing this withdrawal agreement. We're backing it because if there was another withdrawal agreement, it would mean reopening for renegotiation the withdrawal agreement, and the potential that what Spain has not achieved might be achieved in the future. Not that it's of great consequence, because let's always keep in the back of our minds that they have this right to unanimously determine their support for any future agreements. But let's not write off the fact that this withdrawal agreement might pass the House. Mrs. May is going direct to the country. She's trying to persuade people of the different options that there are. This is the best option for the United Kingdom. She's trying in that way to put pressure on MPs through their constituents so that they support this agreement in the House. These are remarkable times in politics. Nobody should write off anything potentially happening or not happening. And if Theresa May has taught us something, it's that she's been written off week after week, day after day, almost since she became Prime Minister. There she is with a withdrawal agreement agreed with the European Union. I don't know that by Christmas she might not be celebrating having got this agreement through the House.
You say no option should be ruled out. Does this include no Brexit or a people's vote?
Look, the best option for the people of Gibraltar is that there should be no Brexit. How we achieve that, whether it's by a Prime Minister withdrawing Article 50 because the option for withdrawal agreement has not been approved and therefore a hard Brexit is going to be too harsh for the United Kingdom, or through a vote in the House of Commons which delivers that, or, it's now called a people's vote as a label, but what we're talking about is a referendum, which I hesitate to call a second referendum because I think it's a different referendum on a different question. Do we leave the European Union with this deal And these options that are now realistic, or do we remain? In other words, the false prospectus option, which the Brexiteers put in June 2016, disappears because you're then dealing with reality. However that were to manifest itself, let's be very clear. My view is we are safest in the European Union, remaining in the European Union, although I must tell you, I think the way that the European Union institutions have behaved, and indeed some of the remaining 27 member states have behaved, means that I will hold my nose to vote to remain in any further referendum, but I'll know that the best thing for Gibraltar is that I recommend we remain and that we all hold our noses and vote to remain.